What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Eagles Monday Recap. I'm Alex Miller from The Eagle, joined always by Travis Brown, the Eagles Texas A&M athletics reporter. Travis, what's going on, my guy?
I'm so glad that the colder temperatures are here, but the allergies are crazy. Like Owen Buchanan from Texags couldn't even talk today in the press conference. I got the sinus. I don't know. Maybe I want 100-degree weather back. I don't know. I can't decide. What do you think?
I don't know about that, but I think there are some things the Aggies wish they could have back from Saturday's loss against Alabama. You know, Travis, we talked at length after the game on Saturday just about some of the missed opportunities that A&M had and, you know, the way things went, especially in the second half. You know, looking back at it, you know, it was clear that Alabama dominated in two areas, really in the pass rush and really in specifically exposing A&M's pass defense. Today, we heard a couple updates about a couple of guys that people have really been asking some questions about. Where have these guys been?
Yeah, well, to reset that a little bit, you know, we talked with Bryce Anderson after the game on Saturday, and he said that they knew that Alabama was going to beat them offensively one or two ways. They either were going to establish the run or they were going to take shots downfield. A&M's run defense has been stellar all season, and it continued to be on Saturday. But they were able to get shots downfield, especially to Jermaine Burton, who just lit them up for almost 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. And most of the targets that Burton had, he was defended by Josh DeBerry, the transfer, who had a great week 1 game, but has been a little up and down ever since. They subbed Deuce Harmon in for him, but if you look at Pro Football Focus at the matchup targets, he only was actually defending Burton one time while he was in there. They just kind of moved away from Burton during that short period, but DeBerry came back. And if you also want to look at Pro Football Focus too, Jimbo Fisher's, one of the things that they said was that one reasons why they kept him in the second half was they went a little bit more zone to give him, to take the pressure off of him. Well, actually, the majority of the yards and catches that Burton had against DeBerry were in zone coverage, according to Pro Football Focus. So that doesn't quite mesh. All that to be said, that left a big question mark on what's happened with Tony Grimes, the North Carolina transfer, who was supposed to be one of the big portal gets for the Aggies this year, plays cornerback. DeBerry actually played nickel most of the time at Boston College and has moved over to cornerback here. Grimes was a true cornerback for the Tar Heels, and even when we talked to Mack Brown at the Texas High School Coaches Association before the season started, when he spoke with those guys and had a press conference, he said Tony Grimes is a guy that they wanted to keep. Like, they were pretty sad when he decided to enter the transfer portal and leave. Jimbo Fisher said today that he's had a lower body injury that just has continually flared up, and when it was one step forward, it seemed then it was 2 steps back, and just hasn't been able to be in practice consistently enough to be able to earn any playing time. And so that's where the situation is with Grimes. And then you also mentioned the pass rush. A&M's offensive line, again, if you want to look at Pro Football Focus, it was the lowest grade that they've had all season. It was in the 30s, I believe 34 was their...
Granted, this was probably the best defensive front they've seen all season.
True, but if you want to kind of compare it to how bad things have been for A&M's at different times, the only grade that they got lower this season was for tackling against Miami. And
which was pretty bad.
Pretty bad. You know, along the offensive line, Mark Naboo got graded as a 75. Everybody else wasn't below a 55, I believe. Trazian was a 55.4, and that all goes all the way down to Chase Basantis, who I believe graded as either was a 17 or a 19.
It was in the teens.
He allowed 6 pressures. Every single one of the starters allowed a sack. So that then asks the question, well, where is Ruben Fothery, who was a starter all last season?
Who shut down Will Anderson 2 years ago like it was no problem.
Exactly. And Jimbo Fisher, you know, he got injured before the season, was held, was limited in fall camp because of that injury. And Jimbo Fisher said he's just been slow to recover from the undisclosed injury. And so those are 2 guys that I think a lot of people before the season started thought would have an impact. And then when it's become obvious that at times and sometimes consistently those have been problems for the Aggies, they thought that those guys could come in and make a difference. Well, it's just, according to Jimbo, injuries that won't let them practice, therefore they can't get thrown out into the game situation.
Yeah, kind of just a tough break for A&M because, I mean, they're right there. And those are two positions we knew coming into the season they were going to have to step it up in order to, do some good things once they got onto the field. And yeah, I think people have just been wondering, where are these guys? It's like they're ghosts right now. And so definitely was interesting to hear a little bit of, at least about what Jimbo had to say about why they're not out there.
Yeah, Grimes and Fothery have suited out for all of the games.
Yeah, they were suited out on Saturday.
And been part of the warm-ups and everything, but they just can't shake the injuries enough to get enough practice time to be eligible to, eligible in the coach's eyes to be up for some playing time during the games.
Well, A&M's going to have to get it going again this week. They're playing at Tennessee. Second true road game of the season. Man, it's the middle of October and it's your second true road game. A&M got a pretty nice cut on the schedule this year. Did not last year. I mean, it seemed like October you guys were just flying every which way across the Southeast.
6 straight weeks. If you want to include the bye week, 6 straight weeks away from Kyle Field last year.
It was kind of crazy that stretch. Needless to say, Tennessee, top 25 team, Joe Milton at quarterback. Josh Heupel's kind of got it going. They lost Brew McCoy a couple weeks ago in that win over South Carolina, but this Volunteer offense is it's got some real threats.
The big thing that Fadil Diggs talked about is their tempo, their ability to get to the line of scrimmage and get a playoff quick. There was times that I want to say it was ULM went a little bit up tempo that kind of kept A&M a little off. And Miami too went
tempo,
and it got A&M. They were still trying to get the play call in and get people in the right positions before the ball was snapped. And so that'll be interesting to see how they've moved on and if that at all negates the pass rush or their ability to bring different guys from different positions. Because if they don't have that, they're going to be really in trouble because the pass rush has been the saving grace for the defensive secondary in the games that they've won so far this year. And I don't think that defensive secondary is getting any faster. Jimbo Fisher does make a point there too, though, that, if the guy has forever to throw the ball, you can only defend someone in the secondary for so long. That's just... Well,
and Tennessee's got a pretty good offensive line.
Yes. And so that's going to be an interesting matchup to look up as well. The other thing, too, that is interesting that, Jimbo Fisher is very rare to throw a quarterback under the bus. He's going to defend his quarterback, and usually even when they make a mistake, it's a line of something to the extent of they made that mistake, but when they came back, they told me exactly why the mistake was made, and so I trust that they can move on and get better. He didn't mention his name, and he didn't actually even talk about the quarterback, but he did talk for a little bit about holding on to the ball for too long, and that was one of the reasons why Alabama's pass rush was able to have some of the success they were against A&M's pass blocking and against Max Johnson. It is an interesting offense. It's a complicated, there are aspects some in motion, some in personnel that are different with Bobby Petrino, but it does appear like the reads, the progressions are pretty similar to the complexities of Jimbo Fisher's. Like Connor Wigman's a good quarterback. He was able to work through that. It looks like at times Max Johnson, especially against a pretty decent secondary, is having some trouble working through those progressions quickly enough. I know if you want to look online, there's some conspiracy theories about him only staring down his brother. I don't think that's the case. But I think that dumb. His brother being the tight end is usually that lowest check down, tight end or wide receiver, running back. They had the running back in blocking a decent amount of times this game. And so naturally that check down, that security blanket to try to just get it out is going to be his brother.
Well, and Saturday, it looked like Jimbo's offense. A lot of bootlegs, a lot of crossing routes over 10 to 20 yard range. And those plays take time to develop. Mm-hmm. And, if a quarterback in A&M system doesn't have time to let that play kind of progress, it could be bad news bears for him. And to Jimbo's point, though, Max had some open receivers on Saturday and probably should have gotten rid of the ball a lot quicker. I mean, there's one where, like, you can see you get the screenshot of, like, just the play, and, like, it's right there. Like, just throw the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to his credit, though, at least according to the Pro Football Focus, Max Johnson is a better passer on play action this year than he is on just set plays. So some of those play action bootlegs actually get him in a position where he's a little bit outside the pocket, a little bit away from the rush, and he's found a little bit more success.
They scored the touchdown on that one,
right,
when he threw it to his brother in the end zone, wide open.
Both the last 2 games. That was a very similar play. So I do think you'll continue to see a lot of the play action because they find a lot of success off of that. Even surprisingly, with how little they've been able to run the ball effectively, the play action still works pretty well.
Yeah, and to Alabama's credit, they did an excellent job snuffing out those play actions in the first half. I mean, think about when they went for it on 4th down.
Right.
And part of that was A&M kind of busted the play, it sounded like, but also Alabama just blew it up. I mean, Jake Johnson was covered from the start. Even if A&M hadn't messed up, I think Alabama had that one covered and probably would have stopped A&M short of the line to gain.
Yeah, there's having some issues again, and I didn't get to go back around, but it's what Layden Robinson was talking about a little bit. They're having issues, and if you want a little bit more shameless plug information on this, go back and watch our first week of the quarterback room with Nick Starkel, because he talked about this a lot. When
Great
you're talking
stuff,
about
by the way,
your slide protections, if they twist, and this is, I'm kind of paraphrasing what Nick said on this, if the defensive line twists or they stunt a linebacker around the outside, it's the offensive line's job to call out that free guy and bump the guy next to him so everyone kind of slides over a man to pick up that free man who's coming through, and they're having some trouble in the communication of bumping everybody over. That's exactly what happened in the play where Connor Wigman got hurt and that guy ran free at him, is that they were trying to bump everybody over. Nick Starkel said, at least when he was playing here, the call was go. If someone said go, that means you're sliding over one person to block and picking up the outside guy will pick up the free man. That didn't happen, and that's why that guy got a free shot on Connor Wegman. So they're still having some communication issues on that kind of protection, and it certainly seems like twisting the running twists on the defensive line is causing the A&M offensive line some trouble still.
You know, you and a couple others asked Jimbo a little bit today about, decision making with timeouts and 4th downs, punting, field goals. Just what were some of the big takeaways from what Jimbo had to say goes into their thought process on some of those things?
Well, I wanted to know what the fail-safe is for clock management for this staff. Not to point fingers or anything like that, just to know a little bit more about how the system works. And a kind of a tangible example of that is all the time you see pretty much every coach who's on the sidelines has a get-back guy, has that guy who's a GA or something who, when the coach is running out on the field to try to yell and get someone's attention, he's the guy that's going to grab his belt and pull him back onto the sideline to make sure they don't get a sideline warning or take a stupid penalty. A lot of teams have a time management get-back guy. It's their job, and Jimbo Fisher did mention of them having kind of a matrix, a spreadsheet of different situations, different times where they're going to call things or go for things. Lane Kiffin, a lot of stories about how they have a book on the sideline that's just full of analytics. They basically have an entire game situation scripted to where they can say, okay, it's 4th down on this yard line and this time, here's the percentage chance, so we're going to go for it, or we're going to punt it, or whatever. They have those fail safes, and I wanted to know if they have that kind of guy, if it was a GA, if it was one of the assistants' jobs, if it was someone who's on a headset. What's that situation? He didn't really answer that straightforward, but what he did get into is kind of doubling down on his decision making at the end of the game, saying that he called a timeout before that last field goal because of 2 reasons. One, he said he felt like it would take his kickoff team about 25 seconds to get out there and get the kickoff, and that's 25 more seconds off the clock. You call a timeout, they have basically as much time as they need to get out there and set up, and it doesn't run any more time off the clock. Secondly, the last time he ran the field goal unit out there and it was in a live ball situation, they had a kicked blocked. So he felt like giving them the time to set up, get the right personnel out there, that would be advantageous to them because they needed those points.
And they had to score.
They had to score. But that being said, you talk a lot about your quarterbacks having to go back out after an interception and have that mentality of, let's move on. I don't necessarily think that burning a timeout there for the kickoff team at a college level should be able to run out there and get a chip shot pretty easily. And then he went in on Saturday to talk about, the reason he went for the onside kick with 2 minutes left is because they didn't have 3 timeouts, but the reason they didn't have 3 timeouts, it's just really circular reasoning. All that to be said, basically, he doubled down on his decision-making there and even went into a little bit of an odd conversation about how actually it was Alabama who had back clock management because they ended up running the pass play instead of taking a knee on first down, which I get. There's some of that in the ecosystem right now because of what happened in the Miami-Georgia Tech game with them liking to run the ball instead of taking a knee, fumbling. Georgia Tech, Haynes King comes back, throws a touchdown, Georgia Tech wins. But still, not a whole lot of answers necessarily on. I mean, there is answers. The answers were they stand by what they did in that game.
They stood by what they did, and it did not work out in the Aggies' favor.
I mean, I'm curious. I know we talked a little bit on Saturday after the game, but you kind of are our anchor in that little post-game recap thing. But did you agree with some of that time management stuff late in the game?
My biggest thing was that, once they ruled Ainias was out of bounds, because they had 3 minutes and 10 seconds at the 2-yard line, and it took them 2 minutes to run 3 plays. That's ridiculous. And I get it that, they had to replay, was it first or second down when the Moss touchdown got called back for the holding. So they ran 4 plays. But the bottom line is time was money right there. And it felt like A&M did not have a sense of urgency when urgency was of the utmost importance. They kind of just drug their feet, and it was the worst case scenario because in that situation, you have to get a touchdown. Because think about it, even if A&M had gotten the ball back with a minute, 10, and you probably have to go at least 80 yards, they would have had to have scored a touchdown. It's easier to just go and get the field goal because you don't have to go that far. So A&M certainly needed to get the touchdown. It didn't seem like they were really trying to get it going. I don't think I would have gone for it. I would have just kicked the field goal. But man, I think it was the sequence leading up to the field goal that got me the most because Jimbo's right. They had enough time to get it back. I probably would have kicked it deep, but I'm not the head coach.
Here's what I say. I don't even think you need to use that timeout at all. I also think you need to kick it after the holding call on third down. Just go ahead and take the kick and take the 3 points because it's going to be a 2-score game anyway. You're going to have a touchdown or a field goal. At that point, you would rather have more time on the clock when you're going to need the longer field to have to go down. Just kick the field goal. Run your field goal team out there, kick the field goal on third down, and then kick it deep. The defense has proven that they're going to stop the run. Alabama is not going to throw the ball on any other down except third down. You have 3 timeouts still. You're going to stop them. Get the stop, get the ball back, and give your offense a chance to go score a touchdown in that situation. Because, too, when you're on the – what was it? They were on – the holding call pushed them back, but still you're on a shorter field. It's harder to play call for a touchdown pass on the shorter field. It's easier to defend. It's a better way to say a shorter field. You could bust a long touch. I mean, look back at the Miami-Georgia Tech game. It was they took 25 seconds to go, 85 yards, 75 yards? I think it was 75 yards. And the last play was a busted coverage. They got behind the defensive backs, threw a touchdown. That's ball game. I think you have better chances then. So, yeah, not a lot of answers. I know we've kicked the can down the road on this, but I don't like the play calling there. I don't like the play calling going for fourth down at the beginning. You take the points there. especially at
just
home.
Get the lead.
It just was.
They did that 2 years ago. They went up 3-0 after the first drive.
Yeah, it was a strangely called game. You can't necessarily say at the end it was probably too conservative, but at the beginning it was a little too aggressive. It just, the pendulum swung too much, and it almost seemed like they were kind of flying by the seat of their pants more necessarily than having a good idea of, and that might go back to the Lane Kiffin analytics book. And I know Jimbo Fisher is not a huge analytics guy. I don't know. They wouldn't really answer the question on that today. So
you're saying Jimbo should listen to Lane Kiffin on something?
I'm not going to step into that bear trap. We'll just leave that one be.
All right. I think that'll do it for us today. I was not trying to draw Travis off sides. But, hey, be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage about A&M football, and we'll see you next week.